Hi guys, I'm here today with Phil, Escott and Ben Hunt. They're two other gentlemen from the UK. They've got excellent insights into diet, ancestral health, and they've really come a long way in terms of their healing journey. Phil is actually someone I've been following for quite a few years now. I don't know how he came up on my feed, but he came up and, I'm the sort of person that's into bodybuilding, but Phil is one of the first people I came across in the ancestral health, healing kind of area online. And Ben, I've become more aware of recently as I've watched their videos recently online and things about the thing is there's a lot of people out there that are suffering a lot. I've seen firsthand just how badly people can get. I've got quite a few clients that are suffering, and this sort of video will be useful for them. It'll give them an idea of what to work from and how to move forwards from their point in time in terms of their health journey. So welcome to you both.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having us on.
Brilliant. So Phil, I'd like to speak to you first about your health journey, particularly the last few months. So we spoke pre-recording about your issues with your arthritis. You've had quite a few problems, and it seems to be that a specific dietary methodology has been appropriate to you. Could you perhaps describe your experiences before starting what you've been doing recently? And as time has gone on, how you've managed to alleviate some of your symptoms?
Yeah, sure. It's been an extraordinary time for me because I thought, oh, I'm this arthritis guru. This is embarrassing. Now I've got a big flare up, But I'm really open about these things, so I don't hide them. And I think people can learn a lot from them because 10 years ago, I was in real trouble where, I wrote my book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, in about 2013 when I'd calmed it down. But I didn't really know what I was doing and went vegan and, just went barking mad. The brain doesn't work anymore. And so I had all that stuff going on, plus kidney stones, and it didn't fix the joints. And so, eventually I found keto. And then in 2015, I went full carnivore, which is when things really started to look up. And since 2015, I've been fine. And, playing lots of drums. I'm a drummer. And, at 60 years old, which I am now, I have tremendous energy and was in pretty good shape. And, that's the thing about the carnivore diet, isn't it? You can get lazy. I used to own a gym in the late 90s and really train like crazy. And yeah, I got big, but I didn't really ever get particularly lean. I never got my abs out. I was never fat, but it was a real wake up call to, how ridiculous the modern dietary things are. And I wasn't listening to the whispers back then of little aches and pains and little stuff going on. These things come along decades sometimes before they actually hit you properly. So in 2010, then it was totally crippled, and eventually found my way out of it, but it took a while, it took 3 years or so. And then not until 2015, really finding carnivore, that it all seemed to get very easy. And I never really thought about it anymore. I sort of wondered how I could ever have had it. But this year has been a real wake up call for me because I wasn't living perfectly, I have to admit. I was traveling around with bands, playing a lot of gigs, late nights, artificial light, eating crap food, not plants, not a regular diet, but even things that are crap for somebody with autoimmunity, like chicken, pork, egg whites, dairy, living on that quite a bit sometimes when I was traveling, because how easy is it to find a fatty piece of steak or lamb when you're on the road? It's very difficult. But I thought I'll be all right. I probably would have been, except for the fact that it was probably it was definitely the most stressful year of my life. And I didn't address that. The whole year was worries about selling our rental houses and losing tons of money on them, and deals falling apart the whole time. At the best of times, I don't like selling houses, and I had to do 5 and then buy one, the one we're in. And we didn't even know if we could do it for the year, and facing being homeless, And every night it was sort of awake all night, and well, not all night, but, I'd wake up a lot, and immediately I'd be thinking about this and how am I going to sort my family out? And then when it sort of calmed down, which is often the way, it's like when people go on holiday and get sick, right? When the stress calms down a bit, then sometimes the body then decides, right, I've had enough. And it was a huge flare, but I'd done a lot of emotional work. This is something I find very interesting, is the connection between the emotions and different joints or different parts of the body. I mean, for me, it's joints. When I would get a flare like 2010, 2011, it was in like 30 different joints. Horrific. And this time it was just one knee. But all the force of it seemed to go in there, and there was a hugely high CRP. I was really inflamed. And lots of panicking of dry fasting and fasting initially, and not being able to get up off the sofa, and lost a ton of weight. And it's coming back on now gradually, and it's calmed down. But it took me a long time, and I was going to make a video, but about it, because some people have said, "Oh, Phil, why are you so skinny? Are you some sort of vegan now? Have you gone vegan?" And it's funny because you can, what my body does immediately when it tries to heal, it seems to just dump the fat immediately. And then if I'm inactive, obviously, like anybody, 6 weeks on the sofa, you're going to lose muscle. And you cannot train with a knee that's sort of close to suicide level pain that feels like a horse has just stamped on it, the whole time. But working with a lot of the emotional stuff and looking at the roots of that have really been key to my healing. Because, so I went more strict, and I've been eating beef and lamb with a couple of times, if I really crave it, some egg yolks, and that's really it. But if I don't crave them, they hurt me. If I crave them, they don't hurt me. It's, again, listening to the body, and what the body wants. But now it's tons better, and I'm coming out of it. But I had to use everything I knew on every level to come through this. And it's taught me a lot. I find that the consults I do now, since this happened, in the past few weeks, even the past couple of weeks, I've got so much more insights. It really is the university of accelerated learning, isn't it? When you get that sick and you have to get out of it. And it is a blessing. People would say, "Oh my God, you look really skinny. Have you been to the doctor?" I thought, that's the last place I'd go. There's no chance. I went there for some bloods, but only for Zofia Clements of Paleomedicina to interpret them, not the GP, But it's been a fascinating journey. So coming out of it now, and this challenge that we've got in the new year. So most people are probably going to be losing weight, and I'm going to be there sort of trying to bulk up again. I'll be on the other end of the spectrum. So I've got to go through it too. But yeah, way better now, no real problems, except just, a bit skinny and a bit, down in energy still, because I haven't really done anything for 6 weeks. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, you touched on a great point there about it's almost like the emotional side of pain and healing. So I've had a lot of back pain for a long time. I've recently had surgery. By the time I say, it's for about 3 weeks prior. And the day that I found out I was having spine surgery is in, it's the 12th of December, you're going to have this operation. I experienced about 30% less pain, and that lasted 2 or 3 days. Bear in mind, I'm someone like Phil, follows a proper human diet. I'm sensible. I don't strain myself. I did notice like there is a very clear emotional connection in terms of like feeling pain versus feeling better, like feeling happy about yourself. I had something to look forward to. So I think it's good to set short-term goals. So for Phil, it might be that he's looking to get back to his former body weight, put on a little bit of muscle, gain a little bit of fat, sort of be more how he's meant to be. And he's going to look forward to that. And that might mean that he heals better. So it's quite possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things I put in my book was that, one day I decided, I don't know if I'm ever going to get rid of this. I might be in agony the rest of my life. I've got to find out a way to be happy. Well, contented. You can't really be that ecstatically happy when you're in that much agony, but contented and accepting during that time, and let it teach you. And that was a point where my healing turned around. I've got this book, if I can reach it over here. If anybody's watching, grab this book, The Secret Language of Your Body by Inna Seagull. Honestly, it's nothing you'll ever have to read. You just look up the body part, even down to individual toes or individual vertebrae, as to what the emotional connection is. And it's absolute genius. Incredible book. It can show you really what is causing all these issues, on an emotional and level, and of old fear-based things and old traumas and whatever. Amazing book. Sounds like a load of woo-woo, but seriously, yesterday I did a consult with some guy, and I read out the body parts that he had issues with. He had psoriatic arthritis. And he was just going, my God, that's me. Can't believe it. I never thought about this before. I thought I'd come on for a consult about, carnivore and whatever. And yeah, we covered that obviously, but it was stuff he'd never thought of. And it brought up all sorts of things from his distant past and recent past that would have been really affecting him. Yeah. It's amazing how it's the old ancestral thing, isn't it? Where, I'm here worrying about my house. Am I going to keep my house? when you're in some indigenous tribe, you build a house. Nobody takes it off you. The mortgage company doesn't. You don't worry about it. You've got your feet on the ground. You're out in natural light. You've got all sorts of things going on. Great community, you know, without all posters up all over the place saying you need to look like this, or you need to look like that, or you need to earn a load of money, or you know, all this crap that we get bombarded with in everyday life nowadays. And it creeps up on you. It crept up on me. I could just honestly slap myself for not noticing it months ago and heading this off. But sometimes we get so used to that level of stress, we just sort of take it for granted, even if we've sort of studied it and whatever. But yeah, I just had to look at that whole aspect of money and sort of worrying about supporting a family and sort of always that worry about what's going on financially. And that's something I need to completely reframe, because we always get enough money. It always comes in. And then you just lose the faith that my missus is 100% confident on that. You know, we get to the end of all the overdrafts and she just goes, right, what's going to happen like today or tomorrow? And something always does. There's always something outrageous comes in and you go, how did that happen? You know, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I come from a background where I've suffered from extreme mental health problems. Maybe a year ago, I wouldn't be able to conduct interviews like this with people like yourself and Ben. I was in an absolute state, like the worst possible state you can imagine. My anxiety was horrific. Following a proper diet has definitely helped me in terms of that. Just, I feel like part of it as well, like you mentioned about the getting good light, grounding, touching the earth. I think a lot of it is also social as well, because I'm surrounding myself now, albeit online, I'm surrounding myself with other positive people that are trying to help themselves. So I think together, collectively, that provides almost like some sort of energy where I feel better myself and I feel like I'm connected to everyone else. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Community is the thing, isn't it? I mean, Ben's always on about this. And it's we only know, what is it, Ben? Like 100 faces or something we're supposed to know. And otherwise it just gets so confusing and overwhelming. You know, I've got 4,600 friends on Facebook or something. I don't know these people. You sort of check out their profile and you click accept or reject. You know, if they've got something that they posted up that's quite cool, you might accept it. But if they're not friends, you know, that's no offense to any of you chaps out there. I mean, I'm flattered that you'd ask me, but all that, but it's just daft. It is not an ancestral way of living.
Yeah, so I want to speak a bit with Ben now about this. So, Ben, what's your current diet like, and what have you sort of managed to curtail in terms of like any health issues? Is it that you've come from the same background as Phil, or is it a bit different?
Yeah, not at all. So, I mean, Phil got really, really sick because his gut was destroyed from all of those plants and beans and lentils and crap over the years. I've always been interested in, I mean, bottom line, I've been interested in how to be happy. You know, how should we live? How can we live happy and contented and satisfying and fulfilling lives as human beings walking on the earth? And it's taken me down a load of directions. I was a mad, crazy eco freak from my 20s, 30s, 40s. And I got really, a few years ago, got really into the idea of building soil. I thought, if there's all this extra CO2 in the atmosphere, how can we maybe turn more of it into soil and store it as soil? Because I saw that as the major problem facing the earth today. That's no longer representative of how I think about it. But at the time, I threw myself into, because this is what I do. I'm just trying to find out how to be happy. I threw myself into organic gardening and permaculture. I designed my own earth-sheltered greenhouse and built it in the garden, grew in that, and I started going off to conferences as well, organised by like the Sustainable Food Trust. I went to the Oxford Real Farming Conference on a couple of occasions, really just trying to learn more about building soil. And it was when I was there at these conferences, people kept talking about the importance of beef and the importance of meat, not just for its place in the cycle of nutrients and how we build soil and all that kind of thing, which is absolutely extremely important, but also for human health. And they were talking about things like conjugated linoleic acid, which I'd never heard of in my life, and the importance of DHA and EPA to brain health. And I'm like, what is this sorcery of which you speak? So I started, you know, once a germ gets in my mind, I start to explore, and I started looking into these, you know, people saying that meat is important for health, because like a lot of people, I'd spent a few years as a vegetarian and, you know, messed about with all of that. And I was convinced that wouldn't life be better if we didn't have to kill the animals, right? And somehow I stumbled across the 100% Carnivore and Beyond Facebook group that Phil ran and joined it. And that was it, really. I then got chatting with Phil. We started off a couple of projects together. And I mean, I've never gone more than a few days strict carnivore, right? But then my gut wasn't that damaged, right? So I transitioned to a high fat, low carb diet for that time. Interestingly enough, though, I did experience some issues. Looking back, it makes a bit more sense. I remember going off to a conference called the Ethical Farming Conference in Southwest Scotland about 3 years ago, and I was a bit heavier now because I was playing rugby at the time, so I got up to 100 kilos. But I've also got a back issue as well. I actually got injured when I was 16 playing in the front row. So I've got one vertebra that's out of position. So yeah, really mixed kind of return to rugby. But I was eating mainly carnivore, and they put on this amazing spread. And I went and got a huge plate of food and sat down and started chatting to this lady that was next to me. It turned out to be Zoe Harkham, who's the researcher into, you know, the truth about dietary guidelines and where they come from, because their origins are not in science, but in the ledgers of the corporations. Anyway, so Zoe then got up and blew my mind. She gave this keynote speech about macronutrients and the complete lack of evidence for all this stuff. Completely blew my mind. But also at the time, I was crippled in my own little, not like Phil, but I was going through an attack of gout, and one of about 5 or 6 that I've had over the years. First one, I was convinced I'd broken a bone in my foot. I went to A&E, you know, got it checked out, and she said, "No, I think it's gout." But it was weird that coming off a regular crappy diet and cutting out the seed oils and cutting out most of the vegetables and the plants and stuff like that, my body then I started getting, and now I believe it's oxalates. I think it's not to do with, it's meant to be uric acid or something, isn't it, that builds up in the joints. I'm convinced it's oxalates, and I think that I had to go through that period of about 2 years after switching to, let's say, dirty carnivore, where my body in some way was starting to let go of these things, but for some reason they then collected in joints. And I think Elliot Overton's got quite good insights on that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've never had to go down the road that Phil's had to go down. And at the same time, there's part of me that says, is there something more to this? You know, and I mean, one of the biggest takeaways that I found from essentially changing my macronutrient profile and getting off the carbs is I used to be a really hangry son of a bitch. Literally, if I didn't stuff something bread, you know, grain based in my mouth every 90 minutes or something like that, my blood sugar would drop, my mood, I'd get grouchy, I'd get upset, I'd get, you know, really antsy and stuff like that. I want to cry for no reason whatsoever. But now, you know, like we were saying earlier, I can go 3 days without food if I need to, or I can go, you know, from one day to the next on one big meal, and that's great. So it really has, I think, flattened out, stabilized my energy is the biggest takeaway from me. But what I'm excited about, what we're going to be doing in the new year, is I want to take it to the next level now, right? I want to know what these guys, some of whom have been forced to do it, and, you know, having to live on the lion diet and just beef and lamb. But yeah, I'm really fascinated. I'm really fascinated about how much more there is to all of this. So over the previous 2 years, we wrote a book called The Red Pill Food Revolution as well, where we went into it's basically the story of humanity's relationship with food from the Paleolithic right up to the present day. And it's blown my mind. The process of researching that book which we wrote. There's 5 authors, but the process of that has been utterly life-changing. So for me, because I come from a background in marketing, web design, web development, all that kind of stuff, I've put all that to one side now. All I want to do now is to open people's eyes and minds to the reality, because the difference between the truth of what we should eat and how good life can be when you're eating what you're meant to eat compared to what they tell us, it's chalk and cheese. It's night and day. It's completely different. I just want to go out there now and you know, shout to the world, stop. You know, don't listen to these criminals. Yeah, they're doing it all, you're doing it all wrong. But the only way really to do it, because I mean, we've all got a lifetime of bad education, but you've got to experience it. It's an experiential thing. I mean, you know, from what I've described, I don't know if anyone can really truly understand the difference between being all that yo-yoing of energy and yo-yoing of emotions and stuff to this real kind of more grounded and steady feeling of where I belong, you know, in the universe. It's really different, and I'm excited about taking it to another level. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I love that. You touched on some really good points there, particularly about the energy. So I'm someone that suffered with chronic fatigue for the last probably 14 years. I do have some thoughts that perhaps that comes from the fact that's when my injury originally happened. So I think there's a sort of a balance there. My social upbringing wasn't the best. Things were quite difficult, but I've noticed with this diet, the longer I can stay on it and stay on track, the more my energy is going up. I'm at the point now where I feel like I'm nearly at the cusp of feeling my best, like I did when I was, 12, 13 years old. So I can attest to that, to the diet for helping me a lot of that in that regard. You mentioned as well about, feeling happy, particularly the side of doing things in terms of social setting. So you've wrote the book, and now you've sort of branched out towards a new a group. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, so we're looking at the big fat challenge. Yeah, it's just a way to get this idea out into the world, and like I say, it's got to be experienced. And we so often go back to humanity's ancestry for our our reset. It's like that should be our go-to to say, okay, how did we live? Because okay, so people say Homo sapiens has been around, they estimate 200 to 250,000 years, which is rather a long time. But that's about 1,000 generations. Okay, so you've got 1,000 mothers and 1,000 fathers. And out of those, like 95% of those were cave people, right? So they came from Africa, or what we would call cave people. They didn't live in caves, but, came out of Africa around, Middle East. And my ancestors obviously ended up in Northern Europe because I'm pale skinned. And 140,000 of the last 200,000 years, we've had ice ages where most of Northern Europe would have been covered by great sheets of ice for a long period of the time. And obviously, the only reliable food source there would be big, hairy, scary animals that you had to go and hunt in groups. So we just don't think that, we grow up thinking that the Romans was a long time ago, but the Romans are exactly the same as us, and had many of the same problems and everything else. But no, when you really meditate on how life will have been for the vast majority of human existence, it just throws what the way that we're managing things today into stark relief. So, I mean, diet, and the reason why we're going after diet in particular, I mean, because there's so many, there's a lot of rabbit holes out there, right? And when you realize how badly, and I mean, the more you see it, the more you just have to shake your head and go, it's the gulf between reality and what they tell us even when it comes to what we put in our mouths, is so massive, then how it's really hard to contemplate that massive divide without going, hang on, there's something really, really wrong here. And I don't want to go, we've only just started chatting. I don't want to go down, too far down the rabbit hole, but you have to open up your mind to the fact that society, let's say, as a whole, the leaders that we have, whoever's in charge, are clearly not attempting to run things in our own interests. And when you realize that, then there's a kind of a domino effect of things. Oh, if they're lying to us about that, then whatever. But for us, the food, reconnecting with your food and the source of your food is important. Yes, on an energetic level, absolutely on a nutritional level. We'd love to talk about all of that. Energy, stability, but also on the communal level as well, because that's what we're talking about. So if you think about it, and it really, really does help to kind of cast your mind back. It will maybe, when you're falling asleep one night, just think about what would it have been like for your Paleolithic ancestors. They climb out of their shelter in the morning. Someone has to go out and hunt. And when they bring food back, it's a huge celebration. And everyone gets to work, cutting off all the meat, the organs, and making use of every part of the animal, because you don't want anything to go to waste. It just didn't make sense for anything to go to waste. But the entire process was communal, and everyone would give thanks. And everyone would really feel that profound, not just sense of gratitude for having a full belly and for knowing that they then had days and days that they could go on with energy. But the way that food establishes our place in the web of life and in the universe was probably the number one biggest flash of light for me in the process of writing this book. So maybe we can talk about that a bit later as well.
And can I just jump in on that? That's perfectly put. And I think one of the main things here is how we've forgotten all of this. And there was no vegans sort of waving placards in indigenous cultures, telling people not to go hunting and stuff like that. They just knew this stuff. We hadn't been confused yet. And now there's so much confusion. I've been studying diet and lifestyle and God knows what, for about 40 years now. And 30 years I was wrong. And I wrote books during that time. And you've just got to admit that you're totally wrong. When I look at all the study I did that was totally useless, because you can tell people exactly what's going on very quickly. But the brainwashing is so deep that you have to go at it from many different angles to give them the confidence. And that's what we want to try and do with this Big Fat Challenge is show people from all sides of it, the scientific side, the ancestral side, the health side, everything that we've been fooled, the moral side, the spiritual side, everything to do with eating meat. And, get rid of these ridiculous ideas that, to keep our hearts healthy, we need to eat oils that were invented as machine lubricants and soap making additives. It's just insane. And when people see it, but you might have to, different people will see it quickly or slowly or whatever, many people are so brainwashed, It was like a friend of mine said to another friend of mine, when I heard about this, that I got sick, and go, oh, well, that's carnivore diet. Go, he just needs to eat a balanced diet. He didn't think there wouldn't have been anything in the brain actually connecting about that. It's just somebody, he probably doesn't even know what a balanced diet is. It's like, cereals and dry chicken breast, probably, so you got both. It's weird. So people don't even know what this means, a balanced diet. It's just nonsense.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone immediately just goes, balanced diet, right?
Yeah.
But meaning food pyramid, meaning, what the US used to have the 4 major food groups, didn't they? Stuff like that, of which one was grains. No, a balanced diet means you are getting
a steak in each hand.
Well, the proteins to break down into amino acids to build, everything. You've got all the vitamins, including the fat soluble ones, A, D, E, K, that Weston Price figured out nearly 100 years ago, right? And some micronutrients. And that's balanced. You know, if you've got enough basically bodybuilding materials, you've got enough energy, and you haven't got heaps and heaps of toxins, happy days.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, we're all taught the food guidelines, the RDAs, things like that. You know, we need 4.7 grams of potassium, I don't know, 60 milligrams or milligrams of vitamin C. I mean, Phil, you might know more about this coming from your background with paleomedicina, Sophia Clemens. Why is that all nonsense? Why are all these numbers jargon?
Well, most of these guidelines were sort of taken on a sort of bell curve, weren't they? And so they took that sort of average of what people had in certain blood results when they were reasonably healthy, and they decide that's where it should be. And it's pretty obvious in the cholesterol thing, where we're told that LDL is bad cholesterol, but you know, if the triglycerides and HDL are balanced up, it doesn't really matter where the LDL is. And so that's obviously a complete con to sell statins. That's made trillions for the pharma companies. Devastating, with devastating results. And so, you know, it's not, it doesn't relate. I mean, certain things, you know, carnivores will often go and get their bloods done and they say, look, my bloods are perfect. And that's great, but it doesn't really mean anything to me. It's like they looked at my bloods and it was interesting, you know, when I was really sick, I went and had some bloods done. And I looked at them and the red blood cell count was down, hematocrit was up. So things that just showed that I was seriously inflamed, and you know, I was eating my own muscle mass pretty much. And you can read this, and yet they just go, right, you got cancer, because you know, if you got red, but to me it wouldn't even be a problem, because it's like, okay, right, I messed up a bit more than I thought. I'm just going to have to get a bit more strict. The answer is the same. I'm not going to go for chemo if somebody finds a lump in me somewhere. You know, these lumps probably come up and disappear all the time as we, you know, go through life. And as soon as we learn about one, then we get tremendously terrified and we get sucked into the system. And the cancer thing is really protected. You know, people get very angry when you say that people shouldn't go for chemo. And so you know, with Sophia, she will interpret them in far different ways. I mean, another one that is very interesting that I'm sure you know is vitamin C sharing the same pathway with carbohydrates. You know, so everybody goes, well, you'll get scurvy. Well, I've been carnivore for 7 years. Surely I'd have had scurvy by now. You know, it would have happened in the first few months. And if I'd have been eating biscuits and dried meat, you know, like they did on the ships, then possibly. But the old ship's captains knew that fresh meat cured scurvy, you know, let alone prevented it. So we don't need it. And again, nature knows best, doesn't it? If you need a really big whack of vitamin C, they're in the berries, because it's got the sugar in there, it's got the carbohydrates. And so in the autumn, nature will give you more vitamin C to counteract that carbohydrate pathway. But then when you stop eating them, you don't need it anymore. People are not getting scurvy. Now,
But then humans come along and think, okay, I quite like this apple or I quite like this berry, but I think we can improve on nature's feeble attempt at this. So let's breed them to max the sugar content and to make them a little bit less bitter. So then what you get is a huge hit of glucose and fructose coming through without sufficient vitamin C. Because if nature had just put loads of sugar into fruits without the extra vitamin C, that tartness, animals would eat it, they'd get sick, because the glucose would be pushing its way into their cells and the vitamin C wouldn't be getting in. So, you know, like you say, today's vitamin C RDA is based on a standard crap diet.
Yeah.
People are consuming far too much sugar anyway.
Yeah, and they're eating bananas that are bred for ultimate sugar content in the middle of winter in the north of England, bathed in blue light, and going, this is healthy, this is paleo.
But they've got potassium in it.
Oh yeah, well, you know, there we go. You know, yeah, you always say a reductionist thing, isn't it? Oh, there's potassium in there, but it won't be so bioavailable. Okay, certain plants have got more of certain nutrients, but they're so bound up in indigestible cellulose that obviously it's not so bioavailable. So whatever's in meat, you're going to be absorbing it the whole time. And with plants, you're not. And when you can tell people, you know, that wonderful video that Anthony did recently, Anthony Chafee, plants are trying to kill you. You know, anybody listening to this who hasn't seen it, look it up. It's wonderful. You know, 136 carcinogens in Brussels sprouts. And You know, that's organic Brussels sprouts. You know, non-organic Brussels sprouts have 137 once you add the glyphosate. It's probably the least of your problems. It's just so funny how we've got it so wrong. And people think this is a tremendous health food and they eat them on Christmas Day. Oh, yeah, I'm eating my Brussels sprouts. They're marvelous. And then they just fart for about 2 days. And they don't realize that that is one of the warnings that your gut is unhealthy, you know?
Mm.
Fascinating. It just, logic has gone.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to discuss as well was we talked about like indigestible foods, you know, things being bound up in plant toxins. I mean, when I was doing my standard bodybuilding diet, you know, a few years ago, I was doing, you know, 5-6 meals a day, sometimes 7 or 8. If I was trying to put on weight, I was just getting fat, in all honesty. But I was going to the loo about 4 or 5 times a day most days. Now it's significantly less. What can you say about that? I mean, there's this whole idea right now, which is like, you know, if you eat, I don't know, 2 pounds of steak a day or beef or whatever, then you're going to have all this sludge stuck in your colon. Is that nonsense, or is that, you know, what do you think?
I think it's a funny one, that one, because I mean, you just, with people with colostomy bags and stuff, you know, you look in there and you see what you can identify, and you can't identify any meat. It's all completely digested. And yet there's always lumps of sweet corn. You know, I always say to people, well, you eat a steak and some sweet corn and see what you can see in the toilet. And you know, it's not digestible. There's no point eating it. So, you know, we get a lot of this business when people first go carnivore, and they say, right, I haven't had a dump for like 3 days. Yeah, but are you uncomfortable? Have you got bloating? Have you got some problem? You know, no. Well, it's okay then. You know, it'll probably balance out. You know, mine balanced out to one perfect one a day. You know, I would say that I was on Sean Baker's podcast and I was saying that I have these turds that are so perfect they could go on the cover of the Bristol Stool Chart glamour calendar, you know. And I want to wake the missus up and say, look at this. It's just brilliant. And that was it, just once a day. Things have gone a bit weird because my gut has been a bit weird, and I've been going like 3-4 days without it. But even still, recently, no, it's back to normal now, but during the healing phase, things can go a bit weird, but the body's doing what it's supposed to do. And it's just trying to get loads of nutrients out of whatever food that you're eating. And you can see this if you dig through PubMed, you know, and stuff like that, and you can see all of these studies, and particularly that one with 60 people or whatever, where they had these people with idiopathic constipation. They didn't know what was causing it, took all the fiber out of their diet, and they just, all of them healed. And it's just, you know, and at the end, it was the World Journal Gastroenterology or whatever saying, well, you know, we're going to have to reconsider the role of fiber in the diet, you know. And that great book, The Fiber Menace, Konstantin Monastersky, I think. I've only read bits of it, you know, but it's another complete con. We absolutely don't need it. And so somebody will go onto a carnivore diet. This is the thing, you see, what we want to do is to give people complete confidence in all these areas. Because somebody, when they just go, oh, right, I'll eat all meat. So they eat all meat. They don't have a poo for 3 days. And they go, oh, well, that's bad. And then they'll pop up and go, I tried that once and I got bunged up. They didn't get bunged up. It was just that they weren't eating all this stuff that the body was trying to get rid of in 5 minutes because it's so toxic to the body. Mm. You know, and that business of it being bound up in cellulose. I mean, I love that study, the oyster study. Do you know that one?
With the tortilla or something, yeah.
Yeah. For people who haven't heard it, just quickly, you know, they were trying to find out how the zinc levels went up in the body. So they gave people equal amounts of oysters, and people who just ate oysters, the zinc levels went up. Oysters and black beans, it went up a bit, and oysters and tortillas, it didn't go up at all. And so it's fighting with these anti-nutrients. So people are going, well, I'll have this steak, but I'll have this nice side salad with it. Going, you're going to get more nutrients just eating the steak. And you're not going to get the oxalates from all those leaves in the salad that's going to have you screaming in agony with kidney stones. I tell you, I've been there, it's just hideous. So it's, everything we've been told on all levels is complete bullshit. It's sort of, you get these sort of funny half-truths coming out now where, you know, you'll watch a diet program. I can't watch them on TV anymore, but people sometimes link me to them going, oh, look at this tonight. Oh, look, they're on about high fat. And you'll get this high fat stuff and they'll go, well, actually, bacon's okay. And then they'll spend the rest of the program talking about the importance of fiber and 5 a day. And so it's just, you know, nobody's going to know how which is the truth and which isn't, which is the whole bullshit and which is the diamond in the pile of bullshit. And so we want to just go through every myth about it to give people complete confidence, because it's the confidence that keeps people on it. If they just jump into it without enough knowledge and something goes wrong, you know, an electrolyte thing, they get palpitations, they don't have a poo for 4 days, you know, something like that, they'll perhaps turn back, you know. And I always think of that that cartoon where that guy's digging and digging through the mountain, you know, and then he's like 2 inches from the gold and he just says, I'm giving up, and walks away. And a lot of people do this with diet, because then they start to research, and a lot of this sounds very convincing. I mean, if you listen to Gregor and you've never listened to anything about diet before, it kind of sounds convincing. But, you know, when you actually listen to it and you know a bit, that wonderful thing that Sean posted the other day of Gregor going on about how good farting was. I mean, come on. And it just, the man's just completely ridiculous. And he still hammers, oh, everybody on the carnivore diet's going to get scurvy. He doesn't notice that nobody has. Yeah, it's very weird. And so they're still hammering this crap, which sounds very plausible to a lot of people. And it's unwinding the brainwashing and giving people confidence. That's the explaining what to do is easy. You can pretty much do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I have a few family members that are waking up to it now. It's very hard to accept to someone when you've been eating away, like yourself, you're eating a vegan plant-based diet for 30 years or so, you know, 20 years. It seems like that is the way. It's not until you unravel it and start looking at things and ignoring what's on TV, what's in the magazines, you start to really uncover what the truth actually is. And I mean, I have a family member that still believes the dogma that we're taught. It's frustrating because I don't know what to say to them, because it's very much, well, we've been doing it for this long, so we're okay, and we need all this, that, and the other. But one problem I have is people don't realize how sick they are until they go to a proper diet, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to the loo 3 times a day anymore. I'm going once a day or once every other day. My energy's better, my sleep's better, my digestion's better. I'm not getting the same joint pain that I used to get. But they're never going to experience it until, you know, like the analogy made about the guy digging in the hole sort of thing. It's not until he gets to it that he's going to realize, wow, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel sort of thing. So yeah, you made a great point there as well.
Yeah, it's funny when people, one of the things that I really noticed was when I first started that carnivore group, and it was only about like 5 friends who said, oh, I hear you're carnivore, and they were like from a paleo group, and said, can we start up a little group? You know, it's 17,000 or something now. I had no idea it was ever going to do that. It was just for a few friends. And in the beginning, you know, it got to maybe 30 people or whatever, and it got to January, and it was, I think I started it in December, and what amazed me was the stories that were coming from the wives or the husbands or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever, who had just supported their partner who needed it for some health issue and decided to do it. And then I was getting these great long things of like, I thought I was okay, I was only doing it for supporting, and now that last bit of fat's gone off my belly, you know, and I'm feeling so much better. Those little joint niggles that I thought were just age, my brain works better, you know, and you just don't realize how much things are caught up with you until you get something, you know, absolutely horrific. And then they don't listen anyway, because the docs frighten them into doing completely the wrong thing. But yeah, it can be so beneficial, whatever stage you're at. It's like we see some really complicated issues massively improved when people go from keto to carnivore. Probably more dramatic than when they go from a regular diet to keto, which will help, but they're still taking in the plant toxins, and they're doing their healthy greens and all that. When you take those out, it's amazing, you know, after maybe some oxalate dumping, if they have that. But yeah, it's amazing how effective it is just dropping. I think Anthony's right that 95% of the benefits come when you drop the last 5% of the plants. And that's certainly true when you're in a big mess.
Yeah, I probably think about the same. I'm still not quite there yet. I think I need to be more fat adapted to really get the benefits from it. You know, that's my own story. It's not why I'm here today, sort of thing. But
no, I'm really interested. Have you ever done a competition like fueled by fat and no carbs?
Yeah, so my last competition was 2021. It took me 1.5 years in total to prepare for that competition, but only because of certain things that are going on around the world that my competition was postponed 4 times. The diet made it much, much easier in that I could adhere to the diet better. My energy was better. Sleep was better. Joints were better. My mood was better. I wasn't ravenously hungry. I mean, granted, when you're 4 or 5% body fat, you're starving. But, you know, I did feel a lot better and the suffering was less. So in terms of like sports performance, I didn't see any negative from doing the high fat approach.
That's interesting. And how, this is something that's always fascinated me. When I had my gym, I used to write for a little publication that wouldn't allow anything to do with steroids or even protein powders or anything. I mean, it was great. It was Stuart McRoberts' Hard Gainer. And I used to write for that. And I wrote one on 20 rep squats. It still goes around the forums, you know. I mean, I look so skinny now, but that was what really made me grow. And I was 35 before I took over this gym. So I was still pretty old. And I trained a bit here and there, you know, but I understood it. And I thought, right, I'm going to show the steroid boys, because I really understand going on the gear if it's your profession and whatever, you know, you can be careful with that. You'd listen to Dorian Yates on it. So there's fascinating stuff he talks about with that, and telling people not to be so damn stupid if it's just for taking an E and taking your top off, you know, on a Saturday night. But how fast I grew was extraordinary on really abbreviated training. You know, I was training like 10 minutes 3 times a week. You know, it was like deadlift and bench, squat and shoulder press and rows and stiff leg deadlifts, and that's it, split like that. All the big lifts and none of the faffing about with dumbbells or anything like that, or cables or anything like that. Just the sort of powerlifting stuff almost, with a couple of other things. And, you know, particularly with the 20 rep squats, they're horrific, you know, and you sort of, you're doing those 20 reps with a weight that you really think probably 8's your max. But people hate squats, and they're very, you know, if somebody puts it back on the rack and starts chatting, they haven't got anywhere near squats, you know. If they fall on the floor, you know, with like poo running down their leg and blowing chunks, then maybe they've pushed themselves that far. But it was just taking 1 set a week, you know, and I was seeing people grow their biceps when all they did was 1 set of 20 rep squats, the really abbreviated thing. And it seems that that's what Dorian Yates had cottoned onto. I remember seeing an article where he sort of would go into the gym and do 1 set of rows with 600 pounds or something, and then just go home and eat and sleep. And what do you think about this? Do you think people are horrifically overtraining most of the time? Because in gyms, you see people with exactly the same weight for year after year, and they never change. But when you do that really abbreviated, and it's brutal, but it's really short, it's really brutal, but really short. And then I grew like crazy and I'm never taking gear. And then it backfired on me, because then all the steroid guys went, oh, right, you're on the gear then. And I wanted to show them you could do it without. And so, oh, well, I give up, you know. But what do you think about this abbreviated training?
Clear, you're talking about, you're doing 20 reps to utter failure. Not as in, I don't think I can do another one, but I'm going to.
Well, with the squats, it's not usually utter failure. It is perhaps for the last 2 sets of a cycle. And then you come down to 75% after a couple of weeks off, and then you climb up again and go through your previous best. So it won't be utter failure, particularly in the early part of the cycle, but it's brutal. It's horrific, you know. You'd rather sort of murder your own mum than do another rep. It's horrific. But what do you think about that sort of abbreviated training? Do you train like that, or do you train a more standard way?
Well, right now I don't really do much of any training in terms of like weights. But, prior to my surgery, I think that people overtrain, but not in the sense that they train too hard, but in the fact that they train with too much volume.
Yes.
Meaning, for example, if I was to do a leg workout, say 10 years ago when I didn't really know what was going on, I might have done 30, 40 sets. Wow. Now I'm doing something like 15. I think there is a time and a place when you'd use more volume in that. For myself right now, with an injury, with sore joints, perhaps you might use a high repetition range, but maybe do more sets to make up for that sort of lack of stimulus.
Maybe a super slow thing, would that help?
It would help. So you want, if you're doing, say, 8 repetitions, 10 repetitions with a heavy bench press, I don't have any clients doing bench press. They all do decline or incline or dumbbells or cables. But if it's something like that, you're looking at doing something where the last rep is as difficult as possible. So in all of my coaching plans in regards to training, I'll label a video, I've got a video on my channel somewhere 5-minute video. This is how you train to failure. Essentially, it's until you can no longer perform a concentric portion of the lift. So it's when you're stuck halfway, you just have to rack it. That's, for me, that's a safe way of reaching failure. And you can do other methods as well. For example, super slow. The only problem I have with that is it's only applicable to a few exercises. So if you're using a compound exercise given, for example, a bench press, you'll notice as the tension on your chest will shift as you go through the movement. So if you're doing a slow rep, say at the bottom, that might then strain your biceps, triceps, and shoulders more. So I think, everything is very custom. So I don't think there's a one size fits all for everyone.
What do you think about bands for that? Where it's at less weight at the bottom, less resistance at the bottom of the rep. This big craze on X3 bars and stuff like that. What's your opinion of those?
I think a lot of the studies are quite poor in that you're using a small sample of people that don't know how to train to failure. I think even at best, even in studies, you can only activate something like 60 to 70% of your muscle fibers. The only way you're going to be activating 100%, i.e. Eddie Hall doing a 500 kilo deadlift, is if you're somewhere else mentally where you feel like someone's going to hurt your children or something. And then in that case, you might think, it's a fight or flight, you live or die sort of thing. Most people won't reach that point in their training because their body won't let them, their mind won't let them. That's what I think anyway.
That was exactly the point of that article that still goes around. It was that I wrote, it's 98, I think, and it's still out there. It was the psychology of the 20 rep squat, how to get through each individual rep and what you have to think, whether you're lifting a car off yourself or a car off your kid or something like that,
Eddie said he had to go to a very dark place to pull that 500 kilo deadlift. And he's never actually said what that place is, but, we can all imagine.
Jesus, well, he almost blew his eyeballs up, didn't he? And what happened? Did he have some sort of bleed or something on the
an explosive nosebleed?
Nosebleeds.
Yeah. Oh, right, yeah.
On the footage that they put online, they show the more modest nosebleed that he got of his previous build-up pull. That they didn't show the actual one, where apparently it just spurted out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, we all experience trauma at some point in our life, and it's quite it can be quite horrific to think of those things. That's why a lot of people don't use that. But I use a lot of imagery in my training. I use music as well. So it might be that I'm lifting to the Lion King soundtrack or Mozart or Beethoven. It'll be anything. Music affects us as individuals quite differently. My brother, it's heavy metal. But when I think about training, as if I'm, I can lift a weight safely within maybe a machine or something. I can go to maximal failure. I might be thinking of something that happened to my granddad before he passed. He wasn't treated very well in hospital. So for me, that's something that sticks. That, something will fire everyone up. Everyone has something that would worry them or give them that mental edge, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had to ask those things. I've been gagging to ask you that about them previous.
You can always ask me off there as well if you've got any other questions.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, getting back to the discussion about the diet and the group. So perhaps one of you or both of you outline what happens. So for example, you sign up to the group. I believe it's $99.
Yep.
Yeah. So what happens then? So you sign up for the group, then do you get a login? Is it a website? What is it?
Yeah. So it's at the bigfatchallenge.com, but we'll put the link under the video, so I'll use that one. So yeah, there's a members area, and we're going to have a schedule of calls. So we're actually going to deliver a live call every single day for 90 days, because that's the level of contact and support, the mutual support, not just from us. We're not suggesting that we can get every participant through 90 days, because we really need the tribe around us. We all need the community. And you also get that sense of accountability as well from doing stuff in a group compared to doing it alone and just watching a video and thinking, oh, now what, So yeah, we're going to have a live coaching call for an hour every single day for 90 days. And in the members area, it's all organized by week. So we've got short bite-size episodes about particular things. What's the problem with seed oils? How does sugar affect your brain? So on and so forth, which gives you a starting point for deprogramming what you've been taught for your whole life about what's safe and healthy to eat. But we're not trying to give all the information, because it would just be extremely tedious. But then we'll put links to, if you want to know more about why this is, then here are some doctors and scientists and whatever talking about it as well. We have the coaching calls every day. That's where, pardon the pun, the heavy lifting will happen, and we'll all be supporting each other to do that. In addition, we've got, and we're going to have a Q&A, so we'll collect like the meatiest questions from every week. We'll address them all together in a Q&A on a Sunday. So we've got 13 weeks. We're breaking the challenge down into steps, but really it's down to the individual participant, the rate at which they want to take on the steps. So you might go, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go full Monty. I'm gonna take everything on day one. I'm gonna go down to fatty ruminant meat and salt and water, and everything else can go. It's an issue of personality. Or you might want to phase it in, so get rid of the seed oils, get rid of the sugar, and work our way there. But yeah, and the other thing is, of course, you're going to get the audio book and the digital copy of the Red Pill Food Revolution before anyone else in the world, which is pretty cool as well. So we've recorded, I'm doing the recordings. We've done 6 chapters so far, got another 15 to go. But yeah, people are already enjoying that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but I do think the communal aspect is going to be very, very important here, because there's a lot. I mean, I think, so the way we talk about it is that there's 2 main things. You've got to retrain your thinking, first of all. But even if you're not 100% convinced that, for example, you don't need fiber, so, because we've all been told 5 a day, eat the rainbow, have your fiber. You can still do something without being completely convinced. But I think particularly, I think the 2 biggest things are getting over the sugar and getting over the grains in particular. And, there's only one way to do that, which is to do it and to experience it for yourself. But we are social animals. We are not meant to be isolated and to think it's all down to me, it's only down to me. We should have a community around us. So that's what we're trying to do with that.
Yeah, I like that it's so affordable as well. I mean, I'm someone with very limited income capacity. I could probably afford it, my partner could probably afford it. You're looking at something, as weeks go by, sort of thing. As I started the carnivore diet, I had different questions. I'd have to go onto different people's live chats to get the answer. I'd have to sort of go lots of different directions to get different resources to find things out. It's great that you've got it all in one place. You've got it from people that are knowledgeable on the topic, and people that have been from both sides of the fence, like Phil, coming from a plant-based sort of background. You sort of really effectively put it all together. So are these talks on individual topics, or is it more of just day one, this is what we're going to talk about, day 2,
You never quite know, do you? Because it always, you get sidetracked when people ask fascinating questions. So, you can't say, listen, stop it. We are talking only about this today and we're not answering your question. So yeah, we've got it roughly sketched out, but how much will it go bananas and go away from those topics, wherever people need to go? And I think another really good thing is when there'll probably be some carnivores there who maybe fallen off the wagon or maybe even haven't. And they'll be talking about how incredibly useful it was, how beneficial. And then people see that who aren't fully carnivore and they're going like, actually, maybe I could try that, because it's not just us pushing it. There will definitely people going, wow, that was great, and then people going, what the hell,
Yeah. So, and it really is going to be driven by the participants, and what they bring, because everyone's going to have their own challenges and stuff. For example, one of the things that I'm really, really excited about addressing, well, 2 main areas. I mean, one for me is the ethical side of meat, the ethical, spiritual side. Can't wait to get into those discussions because it always comes up. We've all been raised on Disney to think that animals have names and talk, right? And so on and so forth. The other really fascinating one for me is the home economic side of it, where people go, what? You're telling me to eat ribeye steak every day for 3 months? It's going to break the bank. Haven't you seen there's a cost of living crisis? But I actually believe that you can you can survive on a lot, actually less than you were by going only for, you know, the proper fuels and so on and so forth. Like, you know, the other day we were in the supermarket on Christmas Eve and they were selling off salmon heads for like 14p each or something like that. And Phil says I was ripped off, but I got a bunch of salmon heads. I boiled them up and all the bones have disappeared. And the chickens have had some, because we have our own chickens, and the cats have had some. And I've got this like fish broth there as well for less than £1. You know, really good stuff. But also then you have to factor in, well, how much do supplements cost? How much does, you know, cancer treatment? The average cost of cancer treatment in the United States is $150,000. Like, you need to factor that stuff in as well.
It bankrupts people and their children, and who it's just an unbelievable scam. It's incredible crime.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I mean,
I come from a background.
Jonathan, if you're saying you've not got piles and piles of cash, so have you found some interesting and creative solutions to getting the proper fuel for your body without spending a fortune?
Yeah, I mean, quite lucky as in my girlfriend drives, I don't drive. I'll look after the kids late at night. She'll then drive off to the supermarket later at night, go into the bargain basement, the reduced section. You can get salmon, you can get beef, you can get lamb reduced. Depends where in the world you are when you're watching this, but there are often reduced sections. It doesn't have to be ribeye steaks. So what I will say, from I'd say 95 to 99% of the people I speak to that are carnivore, is they all eat ground beef and eggs. Even if it's just the cheapest barn eggs, like 5p each or whatever they are, or maybe 10 cents or something, you know. Ground beef, 75% lean, 25% fat, very cheap in the UK. Outside of that, smoked mackerel, if you eat mackerel, there's a lot of ways around it. And I can honestly say I'm probably spending less nowadays. Actually, I am spending less nowadays because I'm not adding all the other nonsense. So when you have, you know, if you have some sort of a bowl of pasta with cheese and maybe it's like vegan meatballs, whatever people have nowadays, then you add the vegan food, which is always expensive anyway. You add the sauces, you add the spices, you know, you got this weird taste in your mouth and you just wash it down with some, you know, Coca-Cola or 7-Up or something. You know, all these things add up. When you start carnivore diet, you will spend more than you did on meat. But when you sort of narrow it down and refine what your diet should be, which is animal fat and animal protein, you will find you spend less as long as you're not doing, you know, porterhouse steaks every day sort of thing.
And waste less, of course. I mean, we throw almost nothing away. I mean, we do then have cats and dogs and chickens as well, which will quite happily hoover up anything that's left.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of tricks. One of our favorite tricks is, you know, humans or animals, we store a lot of toxins in the fat. And so, you know, although regular supermarket meat is better food than anything that comes from the plant kingdom, what you can do is buy quite lean. I actually buy lean beef mince from the supermarket, but we go to a grass-fed farm and we buy their fatty offcuts. So we buy all the tallow from there, and the fats are actually nicer because, and it's you know, they charge almost nothing for it. Although if you were at there, you know, you'd be spending £100 a day or something ridiculous, you know. And but if you go there and get the fatty offcuts, chop it into little cubes, render it down in the oven, you get those nice crispy bits, you know, and then you pour the rest out. You've got a whole load of tallow. So if you then got a lean steak from the supermarket, you've got pretty much 98% as good as grass-fed everything for a fraction of the price. And while we're there, we you know, we always get bones, which they actually have to pay to have taken away sometimes. So you can, there's one place here that some are cottoned on and charge a bit for them, but there's a place near here where it's completely free. And so I'll go out with some liver, and you know, again, you know, it's another rabbit hole eating liver and whatever, but it's a good vitamin pill when you're ill. I don't think you really need it all the time. But you know, we can go out with some organ meats, and we can go out with more bones than we can basically carry, and sort of 5 to 10 kilos of fatty offcuts, and fill up half the back of the car for the price of somebody, you know, who's gone in there and got a couple of fillet steaks, which really have not much nutrition in them because they're all fat free. It's weird the way that we're thinking about that, you know. So you got the bones for the bone broth, which is great for healing the gut, and you know, all the collagen and all that sort of thing. So it's not. You can get by very, very cheaply on this. Yeah, if you get a bit creative.
That's great advice. And you mentioned about the the offcuts of beef. I mean, I can go 2 miles down the road and buy, I think, 1.5 to 2 kilo bag of beef fat. It's about 50 pence, which is something like 65 American cents. And that'll last me a long time as well. So when you melt it down, when you eat it, whatever, yeah, brilliant.
And you don't get hungry. Another one that we found recently. I mean, my wife actually works in the cookery school, so this Christmas we've made up meat hampers for friends that we delivered around the other day. So she ordered from our local slaughterhouse like 20 kilos of beef trim, right? But then going through that bag, and it tends to be quite fatty, and you can also order fat on the side. This beef trim was £4 a kilo, right? But when she went through the bag, she's like, that's a flat iron steak. She's pulling out proper prime cuts out of this bag. But that, yeah, I mean, shortening the food chain is a really, really good way to go about it. Go straight to the slaughterhouse if you can. If you've got a proper local butcher who actually cuts down from primals in the store, like you say, they have to pay to have these is it class A products taken away safely, which are then, by the way, resold by these companies. So they got to pay for the bones and very often the beef fat. The thing that does our head in, we're going into the butchers and it's like, where's all the fat? You've cut all the fat. You've cut all the good stuff off it and thrown it away, and they have to pay for it to be taken away. It's insane. But the other one that's really interesting is because where she works is on a large estate, and they have a deer herd of roe deer that they have to cull, for safety reasons. So she can get like an entire deer carcass for about £70, right? Which is about a third of the price of beef commercially from the butchers. So that's pretty good. And deer does have some fat on it. But then the other day, one of these hampers she delivered to her cousin says, oh, I've been out shooting, I did 3 deer the other day. Do you want one? And they're literally, people will give this stuff away. Do you know anyone who hunts? Particularly in the US, we're not, there are ways and there are means, and it can be very fun and very creative and very enjoyable to go to set yourself the challenge of how are we going to find good food locally that's affordable as well. And do you know what? Kind of coming around full circle, that really connects us to what it really means to be a human being, because that is our place in the food chain. It's not even a case of I'm on a carnivore diet, right? Or you're not on a carnivore diet. You are a carnivore. Biologically, physiologically, you are a carnivore. Suck it up, accept it. You can identify as a herbivore if you wish, but that doesn't make you a herbivore. You know what I mean? You are a carnivore, and what's more than that, and this is, this massive realization for me from writing the Red Pill Food Revolution. Any animal, any creature in the whole of creation, you can define that creature in a lot of ways. You can describe how it is physically or whatever. You can describe what it does. What is its place in the web of life? And your place in the web of life is generally defined by 2 things. What do you eat, as in where do you get your input of energy and sustenance and minerals and everything else, and nutrition? And also, what do you try to avoid being eaten by? Okay, so a lion, a zebra eats grasses and leaves off bushes and tries to avoid getting eaten by a lion, right? That is the zebra's place. If we clicked our fingers and all the zebras disappeared all at once, then something else would come along to fill the niche in the food web that the zebra occupies, because the niche is, if anything, more important than the creature, than the species that fills it, right? So where are we? Where do we belong? Well, we are apex predators. We are hypercarnivores from every angle that you look at, and you can pretend you're not. But what's really fascinating to me is how the search for food, which was our primary concern, as long as you've got fire, you've got shelter, you've got some fresh water, every day's about food. the search for food is what has driven humanity for 95% of our existence, right? And we need to find ways to reconnect with that. And I think, you know, we can go some way to doing that by being creative, instead of just driving into a convenience store and grabbing something in a packet off a shelf and absentmindedly shoving it into your face. And then you didn't even realize you'd eaten the whole chocolate bar because you were thinking about something else. So mindless. Whereas food really should be the center, you know, really at the center of our everyday lives as well. And because it really connects us with who we are, who we're meant to be, who we are designed to be.
Yeah, I love that as a closing comment, really. That does summarize everything. I mean, we're here to live, and we need food to live. We need family to help support us. So it's, as a collective, we are human, and we are meant to be here for that reason, to keep going. You know, that's how we got here after, you know, got down so many thousands of years, sort of thing. That's brilliant. Do you two have any closing thoughts before we finish this conversation? And perhaps can you tell us how the subscribers I have can follow you or find you?
Yeah. Well, you know, as far as the Big Fat Challenge goes, Jonathan will put a link underneath, you know, and use that one to get through there to what we're doing. That's easy to find. And you know, you can find our stuff at theredpillrevolution.com, where there are books, The Red Pill Revolution and The Red Pill Food Revolution. My YouTube channel is Phil Escott. It's just under my name. And 100% Carnivore and Beyond on Facebook. And that's kind of where you'll find us. I also have another one with a really ridiculously long name, because it's called Rheumatoid and Psoriatic Arthritis, Mitochondrial Health and Carnivory. There we go. Ridiculously long name. I was thinking, how can I get everything in? How can I get this in? You know, because I got thrown out of every single natural healing arthritis group on Facebook for suggesting that you could heal it naturally, particularly in the absence of berries and lettuce, you know. And so I got thrown out of every single one. So I thought I'm gonna have to start my own, you know. And that's nice, that one. And you know, I can see a lot of people getting better on that. It's great. If you've got that sort of issue, an autoimmune issue, then pop along and join that one. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find us. And then Ben's got chess channels and all sorts, haven't you?
Yeah, not much to add. I mean, if you're really interested in improving at chess, you could go to Chess Bootcamp. But no, the Big Fat Challenge is our mission right now. And yeah, we're going to be doing it together. I mean, I'm going to be doing it, you know, along with, we've each got our own personal challenges, so we are all in it together. We're going to be learning together. We're going to be doing it all in that way. And there really is, like we say, only one way to find out. You've got to experience it for yourself. You know, how much better could life be? And we are going to find out. So yeah, and I think 90 days is important. We couldn't do it in 30, because these things take adjustment as well. So we'll be there supporting everyone, helping everyone out. And for me, I mean, I'm really excited, Phil. I'm really excited about next week and kicking off. But also, you can join, if this comes out after January the 2nd, which is the official start day, you can join at any time. So don't worry about that. You know, any time in January, you'll catch up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, all the material will be there. Yeah, it is very exciting. It's going to be fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for your time. Appreciate you coming on. And I'll aim to air this much before the challenge, probably over the next few days. But yeah, if you haven't already and you're one of my 1,800 subscribers that's not subscribed to Phil, please do. And also follow Ben's channels as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it, man. Nice to meet you.